as a trauma surgeon, South Africa, working in Somalia, I encounter and help victims of the suicide bombings. Now, and you tell us when we are dealing with pain body, when the pain body is too big, we need to retreat. How can we, as a collective, deal with such severe pain body? And it's really a collective question because we face it. September 11, Boko Haram, ISIS. So your just comments on something like enlightened military defense. I know it might be an oxymoron, but okay. Sometimes as a collective we need to defend ourselves when the unconsciousness is so bad that you prepare to strap bombs to yourself and go and,
Yes, well, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly there are extreme manifestations of unconsciousness, and it is sometimes necessary to defend yourself against that in the right way. So we all know that in the past, when, for example, 9/11 happened, the reaction to 9/11 was not, to put it mildly, the most wise thing that could have happened. In fact, it made everything infinitely worse, because that was not a defense. It was an overreaction of the ego in the complete absence of even the slightest trace of wisdom and insight and repercussions, not to mention other cultures and so on. So the unconsciousness that we see being perpetrated in those parts of the world is connected to the unconsciousness of the reaction to 9/11. Of course, everything is connected. There is not one entity to blame, but the unconscious affects not only one area of human culture or one religion. It manifests in different ways, even in seemingly more conscious places like here. Politicians were extremely unconscious at the time, and that opened the gates of hell and amplified the latent unconsciousness that was there in millions of other human beings, or hundreds of thousands of other human beings. So everything is connected. Defense may be necessary sometimes if it's done wisely, and if it's not reactive but a response to the situation. Wisdom is an absolute requirement for taking right decisions, but unfortunately wisdom is hard to come by in political circles. It seems that as people go into politics, they might even have gone in with wisdom, but then it grinds you down, and it seems very hard to stay conscious once you're in the political system. But there are people here and there who realize the importance. There is a congressman I met from Washington who is deeply interested in mindfulness and meditation and spirituality. And here and there are people who realize the importance of wisdom. So any decision one takes of how to defend oneself, wisdom is required so that whatever you do does not make things worse. So, yes, in the face of extreme unconsciousness, you may need to defend yourself, certainly. Another more general remark about these events. This is only one example of humans creating something that looks actually quite insane. It looks, what they are doing, like the suicide bombing and whatever they do, it looks quite insane, but that is, how is it possible for humans to behave in such a way? And is this not evil? Go back to the Europe in the first part of the 20th century. The whole first part of Europe in the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century, was a nightmare. And what humans did to other humans at that time, First World War, Second World War, infinitely worse than what's happening now with the terrorists. Infinitely worse, just unimaginable horrors. And so that at every time period, the human collective, the unconsciousness that is embedded in the collective, will manifest through certain groups of people. And if you close one door, another one opens and it manifests over there. In the same way that the need for an enemy that is also there manifests, the Cold War came to an end and said, oh, how wonderful, there's no enemy anymore. And not many years passed, and quickly another big enemy arose somewhere else. And now we need to fight that one. I saw a funny movie about, it's a comedy, about a fictitious American president who probably won't get re-elected in the next election, and he says, we need the Cold War, and this was done before that whole terrorist thing happened, but the Cold War had come to an end. The president says, okay, the advisor, you're not going to get re-elected, your opinion polls are, he said, we need an enemy. And so who can be our enemy? Because if a country has an enemy, everybody will unite behind the leader. And they think, okay, we got it, Canada. And then the rest of the movie is the humorous, how the media manipulates public opinion to convince people that Canada is the great enemy. The most unlikely enemy, perhaps, of the United States, except perhaps Switzerland or Denmark. But Canada is right next door, so why not Canada? Oh yes, it's called Canadian Bacon. That's the title of the movie. Now, coming back to the atrocities that are perpetrated in different ways, at different time periods. Now, it's certainly the case that we need to recognize that this is insane. It is a form of collective insanity, psychosis. There's one that is a benign way of looking at it. You could call it evil, but I wouldn't go. I would say it's just insanity, because it has seems to have no real purpose. They achieve nothing through that. So it's insanity. Now, if we go then to a higher level of a higher perspective, then you see that the entire consciousness of humanity is involved in an evolutionary process. And that evolutionary process, if you look at humanity as one single whole, the consciousness of humanity as a single thing, being just one aspect of universal consciousness. So this consciousness of humanity, and every human being is part of that one consciousness of humanity, which in itself is part of the universal consciousness. And consciousness, this consciousness of humanity, is involved in an awakening process. And you might know from your own life, and I know from my life, that the awakening process for quite a while involves intense suffering. So you know that from your personal life. I know it from my personal life. The awakening process, the intense suffering is part of the awakening process. So humanity as a whole is going also through intense suffering, because we are all going through the awakening process. If you are at the mercy of situations, you're at the mercy of things going exactly the way you planned them and the way they are supposed to go. And if they don't, you get upset. Some people get sad or depressed, others get angry and irritated, whatever it is. So you are at the mercy of things happening or not happening, or happening in a particular way, or people behaving towards you in a particular way. So you're always at the mercy of stuff happening or not happening. And if you are more deeply connected with the presence, that is the source of satisfaction in your life. Every other source of satisfaction is kind of fake, pseudo, not the real thing. Presence, that arising presence, is the source of satisfaction. The primary source of satisfaction in your life. Yes, there are secondary sources of satisfaction, of course. An apple pie. You have a nice swim, feels good. You go for a hike. You have sex. You have a drink. You even achieve something. You learn to master a certain skill. And then as you practice, it's satisfying. And then you achieve it. It's satisfying. These are all secondary satisfactions in your life, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course. And if you meet a long-lost friend, suddenly it's great to meet you, it's so wonderful. Of course, there is a satisfaction in that, but they are all secondary satisfactions. The main source of satisfaction is the presence. And even all those things that are secondary satisfaction, many of them are because for a moment they bring you into presence. For example, if you're climbing a mountain, or you're hiking, or you're walking on the beach, or you're swimming, certain activities take you out of your mind and can bring you into presence while they last. And you feel so good. And you think it's caused by the activity, but it's caused by the fact that all the habitual torturous thinking subsided, and you're suddenly completely there. That was so good, that swim, that hike, that whatever it was so good. Okay, why? Well, it was good because were you thinking? No. Were you thinking about yesterday or tomorrow, or your problems, or your difficult life, or difficult people in your life? No. Okay, you were completely present. So once you realize and sense that the true satisfaction is derived from presence, that means when things go wrong, in ordinary life, when you encounter undesirable, so-called undesirable circumstances, when things don't work out they were supposed to work out, things break suddenly, you lose something, a difficult person comes into your life, you can, even in that situation, you can continue to be in touch with the source of satisfaction. Let's say you made great plans for some great wedding, and suddenly on the wedding day something happens and the groom or the bride are detained somewhere and they can't make it. And we've invited 300 people and we've paid thousands of dollars for this wedding, and I've been looking forward to this for years. It was supposed to be the culmination of my life. It's a fictitious situation, but it could happen and probably has happened. It's just one of many possible examples. So this is a very unpleasant thing if you're not in touch with the true source of satisfaction, and you go all shaky and upset, or hysterical, whatever, depending on your predispositions. You lock yourself in a room or you scream, depending on whatever kind of ego you have. But if you are in touch with the source of satisfaction, in presence, wow, okay, that's a pity, but of course we'll have it some other day. And you continue to feel a sense of aliveness, because after all, this moment isn't that bad, just because the wedding has collapsed, and I'm using the collapsed wedding as a metaphor, whatever collapses or goes wrong. So here we have, and you are then above the situations in your life. They don't control you anymore. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that you control them. To some extent, of course, you can manifest certain good things, but you're never totally in control of externals. There are many other factors. So, and you don't need to be totally in control of externals. So, the question always arises, are you above the situation or are you below the situation? Are you at the mercy of situations and people, or are you free of dependency on how other people behave towards you, or how certain situations evolve or happen, or dependent on whether something happens or does not happen? Shortly after this shift in consciousness, I had saved some money to visit my dad in Spain, and because his wife was extremely challenging, it was agreed that I would stay in a small hotel. I was about 30 years old. So I was looking forward, of course, to I lived in England, going to a sunny southern Spain, spending 10 days there, and my dad booked for me a place. He didn't have any money at that time. Well, he had some money, but I think not enough to book a great room for me. So he made a booking, but he hadn't looked at the hotel or the room. And when I arrived, the hotel was by the sea. So I imagined a view of the beautiful blue Mediterranean Sea. And when I got there and I looked out the window, there was a brick wall. It was facing away from the sea, and there was a kind of cliff, and there was just a brick wall and a little bit of sky. And so I stood there and looked at the brick wall, and suddenly I felt incredibly peaceful. And I suddenly realized it doesn't matter at all whether I have a sea view or a brick wall. Why didn't it matter? Because there was a flow of satisfaction coming from within. If it had been my choice, I would have said, I prefer a sea view to a wall view. But I didn't have a choice, and I was amazed because that was not long after this inner shift, so I wasn't yet familiar with all the effects it has on things in one's life. And there were many instances when I was amazed. I said, why do I feel so peaceful? I don't know, I just feel... I think in this particular case I knew that at some level it ultimately did not matter. And that was so liberating, that reminds me of a very similar story. We had a retreat probably in Oregon many years ago, and one of the participants, who was also a friend of ours, had just started to unpack things in her room, the retreat room, when a woman burst into her room without knocking, in tears and sounding hysterical, and she said, "This was supposed to be my room." And they put me somewhere else. I asked specifically for this room. I've been waiting for this retreat for a long, long time, and I'm having difficulties in my life, and this is all just so dreadful. And our friend, without even giving it a single thought, said, "You can have it. I'll move into yours." And the woman's, "Really? No. Do you mean that? Oh my God, oh wonderful, thank you so much. I'm so happy." It is probably true that she had been through difficult times, yes. But she was totally at the mercy of externals. And our friend, I didn't inquire further how she felt when she moved into that undesirable room, which probably wasn't that bad. I don't think there was a brick wall outside the window. She was fine. So in her there was some connectedness with the source of satisfaction. So her well-being did not depend on what kind of room she was in. Now, does that mean whatever room they put you in, when you book a room in a hotel, you should say, okay? Not necessarily. Why not? If that is not the right room, you can talk to the receptionist, say, "This isn't the room I booked. I'd rather have the room that I booked and paid for," and then see what happens. But again, there is not going to be that, or the anger, "This is, how dare you put me in this room?" You lose all, there's no longer a flow of, do you remember we talked about what makes up a true human? It's goodwill towards other humans, a flow of benevolence and goodwill no matter what the situation is. And even if you're complaining about your room, you can complain, and there can still be a flow of benevolence and goodwill because there is a human being there. That human being may have nothing to do with the fact that they put you in the wrong room, and you probably know that, but you're angry with him or her. So, of course you can change situations, and I think I probably asked, I don't remember all the details, I may have asked, I'm sure I did, in that when I got to that hotel with a brick wall outside, "Do you have another room with a sea view?" "Sorry, that's all we have left." Okay. So it was a surprise to me that I could be okay with that. And I don't know how this woman from the retreat, whether she benefited from the retreat, And whether by now, I haven't seen her in a long time, I wish her well, and I do hope that by now she has found the source of true satisfaction within herself, so that the wrong room does not create an enormous amount of suffering. If a wrong room creates an enormous amount of suffering, how much suffering when something really goes wrong? This mind-made sense of self is also much more focused on the negative than the positive. To be free, you awaken to who you are beyond your history and your life situation. So in itself, of course, it's neutral. The technology is neutral. It's not either bad or good. It depends how it's used. It is, at the moment, it is to a large extent a reflection of the unconscious mind. So if you want to learn about human unconsciousness, you want to learn about the human ego, just go there and read what people post. And look at the reactivity of people on social media and so on, the comments they leave. You can learn a lot about unconsciousness and identification with mental positions. So the first thing, of course, is be careful with what you put out there, what kind of thing you post. If you post things online, is it reactive? Give yourself a moment when you read something before you type in an answer or a comment. Give yourself a moment and go within, and avoid making people wrong. You can talk about issues, but don't make people wrong and amplify your ego by making others wrong, even though their position, political or otherwise, you may regard as completely misguided or erroneous. There's still a human being behind that, so you can put forward arguments against somebody's perspective or viewpoint without making another human being wrong. So what you put out is very important. Is your communication conscious or not, or is it reactive? And then it can be used for other purposes. I'm there too sometimes. There are certain places where I appear could go to YouTube or whatever, and then suddenly there's a spiritual teacher talking. There are some meditation sites on all these things, but there's great potential for raising consciousness there. Somebody recommended to me several apps for meditation, which I now have on my phone. I haven't tried them yet. I've been there for a while. But I have 4 or 5 that are there, want to try them out. So that's the very thing that otherwise would clutter your mind can actually also be used to bring about space or spaciousness in your mind. So it doesn't necessarily mean that when you have your phone, or the 99% of cases when people look, their mind is being cluttered, but maybe they're on a meditation app. Maybe they're looking at a beautiful, spacious picture or listening to some sound or saying, take a conscious breath have a little reminder every 2 hours to take a conscious breath and bring spaciousness. Oh, yes, spaciousness. So the very same thing that otherwise clutters your mind can now unclutter your mind. It's possible. So I believe that is also going to grow now, and it has to, because otherwise that technology could potentially drive humans completely insane, to remove their ability to focus on anything for more than a few seconds. People create young people who are totally uncentered, have no spaciousness within, don't even communicate with humans anymore because they prefer to communicate digitally. So all these things are important. What you put out is important. So always take into consideration whether this brings people to presence or whether it clutters somebody's mind. And perhaps you can combine. Of course, what you do needs to be also commercially viable. So, but I believe you can combine the two. It's not necessarily a question of either it's commercially viable and it clutters people's minds, or it's presence and we are going to go out of business. Doesn't have to be like that. It's up to you to be creative. The more still you are, the more creative insights you will have we might get some amazing ideas of what is possible. I can't tell you what is possible. I don't know enough about it. I know very little about it. So, but you're in a wonderful position. So allow yourself to go deep enough within, because then the creative ideas seem to come. And if you find a thing that is not only brings people to presence, but also helps your company to grow, then that becomes a conscious business, which is wonderful. It's challenging, of course it's challenging. So don't let all your attention be absorbed, though, by that kind of activity. You still need to connect with nature. Take it off as much as possible away from there, connect with nature, and then bring it back. What tends to happen is that these devices, people are never, they're in bed and they're still doing stuff on it. So, and that it takes you over there at dinner and they're doing stuff on it. It breaks the relation with other people you're at dinner with. I see people in restaurants, the couples sitting at having dinner together, and both are on their phones. Now that probably means they've known each other for a while. If it happens on the first date, the first date will probably be the last one. But if it happens after they've known each other for 2 years, then it's almost a normal thing that they're not present with each other. Or then they exchange a few words, and then she looks at the phone again, and then he stares into space, and then she's still on her phone. I've actually observed it. She's still on her phone, and he's staring into space, and then finally he gets out his phone too, because he doesn't want to be staring into space. And then I wonder, are they texting each other? Two good things that I learned that in some huge companies, I believe it might be VW in Germany. Well, they've had enough problems, but now they tell their employees after 6 p.m. they're not allowed to use the company phones anymore, not to deal with emails or anything. They need to get off. And that's a very wise thing, because the more people's attention gets absorbed by this, the more confused and non-creative they become, the more cluttered their minds become, the more ineffective they're even at their work. Not to mention, as human beings, their quality of life decreases enormously. So don't give yourself spaces, don't allow these things to take over your life. That's vitally important. So it's wonderful that some big companies like that have this policy now, no emails or anything after 6 p.m. Well, that's wonderful. I talked a couple of years ago to Ariana Huffington, who has a famous news website and has also written some books, and she describes in her latest book how her life deteriorated more and more, although she was making a lot of money, and finally she collapsed and hit her head on her desk, and it was complete breakdown. And now she has, for example, in her private life, and that's a good thing, she has this policy of no digital device in my bedroom. So in her bedroom, she still has books. Sometimes she reads in bed, but it has to be a book, not a Kindle, not the iPad, not the iPhone, no digital device in my bedroom. And that's a good thing to have. That's, at least you have that space for yourself. So everybody needs to be really conscious of the addictive nature of these devices. Oh, yes. Can you speak about how to be in this world with this constant push for connectivity? How did we get to the most profound things from a relatively simple question? Oh, yes, we talked about doing and being, without feeling that being present is another thing to do. How to be in this world without this constant push for connectivity? Well, the first thing is you turn off your push notifications. That's already a big step forward. And you need to be disciplined in the use of your device, your phone, whatever, tablet, phone, so that it doesn't take you over, because it's simply an extension of the mind. And if it wasn't enough before we invented these devices, humans had already been taken over by their minds. Even 2,000 years ago, not as much as now, but even 2,000 years ago, Jesus said, why are you always thinking about tomorrow? Why are you always worried about the next thing? Look at the flower, look how it lives, in total alignment with the present moment. And it's being sustained by the one consciousness. That's my translation of the... So already then, humans had been taken over by mind, but even more so since then, mind has proliferated, and then the clever human mind came up with these devices. Said, let's extend ourselves into the realm of things, and then we can create this, which is an extension of the human mind. So when you might have noticed, when you're with yourself, you have the voice in the head. Unless you begin to awaken, in which case you're able to experience spaces of alert, still presence. It's beautiful. But otherwise, you have this thing, commenting, talking, arguing. And then this becomes a burden for many people. Of course it is a burden, because a lot of the stuff it says is actually not pleasant. And so you experience it as a burden, and since you derive your sense of identity from it, it becomes yourself. This talking voice, you think that's you. It becomes the self. And you walk around with this burden of the self. And in order to unburden yourself, one thing you can do, you think you can do, is you can watch the television, or you can go on to watch. There are countless things that you can watch on the little screen. The entire world's knowledge at your fingertips. And the moment you watch the screen, whether it's television or on the screen, you might have noticed that your so-called own thought processes come to a stop. So to some extent, you're free of the self. This is why people sometimes find watching television relaxing. Say, okay, I just need to relax now, let's turn it on. By this they mean, while they watch the television screen, they are not burdened by their self-induced thought processes. What they do, however, they replace their own thoughts with the collective thoughts. So you're not in a state of thoughtless awareness when you watch television or you watch something on the screen. You absorb the thoughts from there into your mind, and you link into. So for people often in a state of semi or hypnosis when they watch, and it kind of paralyzes you. It can also happen with the screen, with television already started, of course. I don't know whenever 60 years ago, whenever television started, and you go. And so your mind is just absorbing whatever is playing. It's the TV mind, which is receiving stuff from wherever it comes from, is going into your mind, and you become no longer thinking your own thoughts. Occasionally you might, you say, oh, this guy is so stupid, and then you're watching again. And then another thought, why am I watching this rubbish? Half an hour later, this is so awful. But you can't turn it off. Here's the remote. Let's just try one more channel. There might be something else there. Oh no, that's stupid. Try one more. This is how an addict behaves, and the device is even more addictive because you carry them with you, and you may have to admit that there is an addiction in you. Not everybody here, but quite a few. It would be almost normal to feel this draw towards it, and you use it even when you don't need to use it. That's the amazing thing. When you're standing at the elevator, waiting, so another person is standing next to you, and he or she is pulling out the phone, and then you pull out yours. You don't know why. Or anywhere you're ordering a tea or coffee somewhere, and you're standing in line, and if you look around, there's almost nobody, and probably nobody, who is not looking at this little thing. This is scary. Zombie-like. Now, if somebody from the past, the so-called past, a time traveler from the past came here, and even not the distant past, let's just say even 20 years ago, and he arrived and would see in the streets, in restaurants, in cafes, everywhere, in public transport, people are walking around with these things, staring at these things. Say, what's happened? Something has happened to humanity. We've all become zombies. Something terrible must have happened. What was that? These are wonderful devices, the incredible possibilities of having access to all kinds of knowledge, but there's always the downside. There's a huge, huge downside to it. They are addictive. They stimulate the mind. The thing you want to become free from, you want to become free of mind, and this will prevent you from becoming free of mind. So as you need to be disciplined enough to not automatically look at it whenever there's a moment and you're waiting for something or whatever it is, and there's no need to check these things. I don't even know what they are, but I just know that Facebook is the biggest thing, and then there's the Instagram and Snapchat and countless names, and some people have all of them on their phones, and you need to know the latest thing. Crazy. So, but if you detect the addiction in yourself, then you have to first of all admit that you are addicted. Don't deny it. You know Alcoholics Anonymous? The first thing when you go there, you have to say, I am an alcoholic. Now, some people say, well, that's not a good thing because your identity is not being an alcoholic. Of course not. So it could be misunderstood. But your nature is not being an alcoholic. It is your present condition is that. But to recognize the problem, the difficulty, the challenge is just you stated, yes, I'm addicted to this phone, and I choose not to be addicted. And then you can be the only one in many places who is not looking in waiting rooms, waiting in line, whatever it is, waiting on the phone for somebody to talk to you, and in the meantime, but you use this beautiful thing of just being present, and you look around, and you step out of thinking, and all the others are still in the hypnotic state. For a while it can be helpful, but not to become dependent on either, or use it as a tool to help you, yes. But don't become dependent on listening to music so that you can be present only when you listen to music.
What is music? Somehow it does stop our minds, and why it is so important to us. Maybe about art in general also. And what is your favorite kind of music?
Okay. Yes, it certainly stops the conceptual mind, although music exists at different levels. There's some kind of music that very much stimulates the emotions. That's not the mind, but the emotions. The listening of music can be a wonderful meditation, and practicing of music even more so. Do you play an instrument? But do you listen to music? What kind?
Classical mostly.
Classical music, yes, yes. Yes, there were several years, I don't know how many, maybe 15 years, when I listened to very little music. And why? Because the strange thing, I actually said that to somebody at that time who asked me the similar question, and I said, no, I don't listen to music much. That was at that time. Why not, she asked. Because it felt to me that all those things like music and art, they were all inside me in the essence of whatever music can express. I could continuously sense, well, I still can, in a way, I can continuously sense inside me. And so I can appreciate music. I said to her at the time, but I don't need it. It's like I have the cream and everything else is the skimmed milk. But even nature I perceived as the skimmed milk. I remember often sitting in nature and in a state of sometimes closing my eyes. Especially when I was still living in London, I would go on Hampstead Heath every day, sit there on a bench and close my eyes, and such beauty and depth of the formless life itself, or consciousness. And then when I opened my eyes again, nature was still very beautiful, but it seemed like a diluted version of what I had within, or even what I was within. Not that there's anything wrong with that. For many people, it can be an entry point into that, so it can take you into that. Now then the time came when I started listening to music again as an enjoyment, and I do now, perhaps not every day, but from time to time I listen to music. More recently on my iPad. Although the speakers are very small, they're about that size on the side. But yes, and I actually enjoy some of the kind of spiritual kind of music, some New Age music. Some of it is I love very much. Some of it can be a little bit tinkly and emotional or superficial, but other kinds of New Age music I love very much. And I found this the other day. I found a station, I think, or Kim found it. It's called Calm Radio, and I believe it may even be Canadian. And Calm Radio has many channels, but there's one station, and you can choose the type of music you like, and it'll play that classical, oriental music, Om music, healing music, spa music, folk music, classical music, opera. It's so many channels. Just a wonderful. Yes, the practice of an instrument also can be a wonderful meditation for many people, because it really stops your mind. The important thing, however, it can be helpful, is not for presence to become associated with any particular activity. The activity can be helpful, but at some point you have to use it as a help, like playing an instrument, the flute, whatever it may be. If I learned an instrument, I would probably take up the flute. It's a simple thing, although not easy probably to master. This is I'm now playing the soundless flute. The equivalent of one hand clapping. Not to become dependent on a particular activity so that you can be present, or that for a while it can be helpful, but not to become dependent on either, or use it as a tool to help you, yes, but don't become dependent on listening to music so that you can be present only when you listen to music. Don't become dependent on playing the instrument or dancing, beautiful thing too, moving your body. Don't become dependent so that you can only be present when you're actually dancing. Well, at least it's a wonderful thing, you can be present when you dance, but you can't dance continuously. Well, unless you regard your whole life as a dance, then it might work. Don't become dependent on climbing a mountain so that you can be present, because if you're not, you fall off. Don't become dependent on driving a fast car. Oh, really present. Because So that presence is not bound up with one particular thing that you do, but nevertheless use those things as helpful ways of bringing you into presence, but then once more presence arises, switch off the music. It doesn't mean you can't switch it on again an hour later or tomorrow. Switch off the music. If music brings you into presence, the mind is not, there's just the pure act of listening. And you're aware that there's a pure act of listening, and you are the consciousness, you know yourself as the consciousness that's listening. Beautiful meditation. And then my next suggestion is switch off the music and continue listening. To what? Nothing. So when you remove the object of awareness, what remains is awareness itself. So this is how it can be a wonderful portal. The same thing, any activity that brings you into presence, once you feel presence is arising, it's there, stop the activity and just be aware of presence itself. And then you can carry, if you enjoy it, then carry on doing. And then again step out. So so that presence is not bound up with one particular activity, or you can look at a photo of a spiritual teacher who is present to bring you into presence. Ramana Maharshi, there's one particular photo of him is a beautiful photo where you actually truly feel the light shining through his eyes, and that was where the photographer took that photo, 1930 or so, and the photographer said, no, Ramana Maharshi said, is there enough light? The photographer said, you are the light. And that's a beautiful picture. And the amazing thing, some people have even used pictures of me to look, and you look, as long as you know you're not looking at a person, that's not why you have the photo. You're looking at to put you in touch with a particular state of consciousness. You're ultimately looking at yourself, the essence. So then a picture can activate that in you. And then the next step is, again, similar to what I said before, close your eyes or remove the picture and continue to feel that presence. So you can use whatever is there to help you, but don't become dependent on it. Whatever it may be, use it, enjoy it, but don't become dependent so that that then exclusively becomes associated with presence. And then you can only be present when you put a little altar with Ramana Maharshi up, and then but as soon as you go away, and that's an amazing way to live. But you don't need the narratives anymore. Only when you live in connectedness with the deeper level of your being, only when you know that you are, and the sense of already being complete on that level, not needing anything on that level, already being fully yourself on that level. You're not perhaps fully yourself on the level of form. You can still achieve things. You can still learn new things, master new things, try out new things. Why not? There you are not complete. But on the level of the depth level of being, that you are at the deepest level you are already fully yourself in the timeless present moment of being. You only need to sense that in yourself. Then you can operate on the two levels, and then you don't need these narratives, spin these narratives anymore in order to continuously enhance your mind-made sense of self. And then you can be with situations, allow them to be as they are without imposing any unnecessary story on it. So people behave the way they behave. People don't always do what they're supposed to do. They just act according to their level of consciousness, and you just accept that. They act, or whatever they do, that's what they do. The situations are as they are already. So you no longer, because many narratives have this element of deep resentment to them too. You might notice that when the mind constructs narrative, as they do in the collective too, these people don't believe what we believe, and therefore they are actually bad, evil people. How can they not believe the truth? They believe that this event happened 100 years and in the year so-and-so, but in Christianity it happened too in the past more than now. When was Jesus born? I'm telling you it was then. No. What, you don't believe he was not born on the 24th of December? That's totally wrong. And people killed each other for that. So be careful of narratives, but I'm not saying don't have narratives anymore. First, get in touch with the stillness within. Then you'll notice from there that when the narratives still arise, you can smile. Or when you can, before you know it, you might have been talking to somebody about your story, and then you notice it and you can smile, and then you realize you don't really need that story anymore. And then it could be that you're not as popular anymore at dinner parties because you don't have these interesting narratives about what happened or they people did. Well, do you know what he did? You'll never believe it. That's what he did. Oh, God. Wow. I thought he was I knew he was like that. I had my suspicions. So there are many Zen stories like that, where the essence of Zen is, of course, to live without a narrative, in that simplicity of awareness. And then the simplicity is the famous saying that you probably know from Zen: chopping wood, carrying water, is a Zen saying, which is what you do in the Zen monastery every day. You chop the wood for the fire, and you carry water for washing or cleaning, and every day you chop wood. And so there's a Zen saying, chopping wood, carrying water, which means you go about your life without adding anything to it. There's not the story of, I can't stand this anymore. I've been chopping wood now for 3 years. Why doesn't somebody else do it? Or we should employ somebody. We must get. And this carrying water, it's getting too much for me. Why should I have to do that? I'd rather be somewhere else. I'd rather be playing golf than carrying water. These are all stories that go through people's minds that stop them from being giving their fullest attention to whatever they're doing at the present moment. Doing with resentment, you do what you do it, but there's resentment behind the doing. You're doing it, but you don't really want to be doing it because I shouldn't be doing that, or whatever the narrative is why you shouldn't be doing that, or don't want to be, would rather be doing something else. Famous bumper stickers on cars: I'd rather be fishing, I'd rather be golfing, I'd rather be in Hawaii. Or as Ram Dass's bumper sticker that I saw on his car, I'd rather be here now. So that's a good one. I'd rather be here now. So then you are then always fully in whatever activity you're doing. It's not being obstructed by some kind of story in your mind. Then you can give your fullest attention to whatever you're doing without interference of some entity up here that doesn't really want to be doing it for some reason. And so many people have continuously some stuff going on there that is in conflict with whatever is happening or with whatever they are doing in the present, not perhaps permanent conflict, but a lot of conflict with whatever they are doing. That prevents a high quality of activity, because one can look at activity in terms of quality. Quality in doing something is intrinsically connected with the degree of presence or consciousness that flows into the doing. So when you buy something that is of quality, whether it's a work of art or somebody has made it, then that sense of quality derives from the consciousness of the maker of that thing, whatever it may be, because it shows there is attention in it. There is complete attention to the present moment. It wasn't somebody said, oh, we must finish that as soon as possible so that we can make as many things as we can today. Let's make it as quickly as possible. So every doing is a means to an end, to the next moment. Let's make this. And you're already looking to the next one while you're making this. So in other words, you'd rather be there than here. That's low quality doing. You're not present in the doing. And because there's mental interference that creates the thought of the next moment where you would rather be, because the next moment is always a thought. The next moment has no actual existence except as a thought. Isn't that interesting? There is no next moment unless you think about the next moment. I have to think about that. Now you can't. Is that true? I have to start thinking. Is there no next moment unless I think about the next? Let me think about that. I'm getting very confused. It's actually quite simple. It's so obvious. It's like saying, here's an apple. Yeah, there's an apple. That's what we call it, an apple. There it is. There is no next moment. There's only ever this moment, obviously, away from your thoughts. So if you continuously live as if the next moment were more important than this one, you cannot give your fullest attention to this one. That diminishes the quality of your doing. It decreases the your connectedness with true intelligence, where creativity comes from, inspiration comes from, which can then not flow into what you're doing, or only trickles. Little trickles might still flow, but perhaps not even that. Because you're looking to the next thing. You're not fully with this thing. And the next thing is mental stuff. It's a thought. So that's another aspect of the interference of narrative, because even the next thing is a small narrative in your head. And that tells you, I need to get there. I'd rather be there already, therefore I need to get this out of the way quickly. And then whatever you are doing here is not, you're not fully present with it, which is reflected in the quality of the doing, which has infinite repercussions, because other people are affected by it also. And so your life then continuously is experienced as unsatisfying, because you never arrive at the next thing. Because when the next thing comes, it's the next thing. You're trapped in a mind pattern that says you live for the next thing. So if you discover within yourself that a lot of the time you're in a state of lack, of insufficiency, of not enough, and you feel that the answer to, the remedy is to be active in this world and achieve and do as much as possible, then you'll probably find that ultimately that is not the answer to your state of lack. In order to transcend, to go beyond your state of lack, of neediness, of not enough, spiritual practice and spiritual realization is necessary. Focus on the realization of being. It's only there that you can go beyond that state of lack, which is ego. Go within and discover who or what you are beyond the person.
So I have a pain body question, and the basic is, how do I know if I've dissolved it or if it's just gone dormant? My experience, like prior to 4 years ago when I discovered the power of now, is that when it would come up, I wasn't even aware of it, and I drank and drugged and managed emotion that way. And then I got in recovery, and I would share and talk about the pain, and it seemed to dissolve in those moments. But upon discovering Eckhart's work, I was thinking, well, maybe it's just gone dormant. And so in the last 4 years, I noticed certain suggestions or triggers, they still bring it up. And I think, okay, in the moment, I can dissolve it. I've used some of the techniques right out of chapter 2, maybe 3, where, try not to feed it with thought and just, look where it's at, put attention there. But I've had some success with it dissolving. I didn't have to go share it with another ego, but I wasn't sure if it was Eckhart's ego through the reading that helped put it dormant or not. So this idea of
how will you know?
Dissolving, my hope is like I want my pain body gone for, good.
Yeah,
And
we all do.
And I'm being told if I can just stay present 100% of the time, then it is dissolved. But then I can't seem to stay present. I tend to go to sleep all the time. And then all of a sudden my pain body wakes me up, and then
So you know it's not dissolved.
Yes.
Yeah. Then you deal with that in that moment. What a drag. But I want it gone.
Yeah.
That's what the ego says. I want it gone. Why do I have to keep on dealing with this?
Yeah.
It's ego. The moment that we can just face it, and when it comes up, and not even think about whether it's going to be gone forever, because you know what? Forever is now. There is no forever. There is no time. There's only this moment, and what arises in this moment. Are we going to choose to deal with it consciously or unconsciously? And then the mind will bring up and the ego will bring up that, oh, but I've got to have it, stay away forever, and I can't have it come back. It could be gone for years. And then life will say, okay, you're ready for another test to see if it's really gone. Who are you committed to? Are you committed to consciousness? Or are you committed to being unconscious, which means bringing in time, bringing in the ego, bringing in thoughts such as, I don't want this ever to come up again. That's a thought. We are dealing with a lot of baggage, not only personally, but collectively. Because we are all connected, we're one. So we've got our personal unconscious actions that we have dealt with, and that personal could be in your family life and your upbringing and stuff. And then we have the collective unconsciousness within our own community, within our society, within our country, different egos. And it is interesting because when you say you want it gone, that's a nice thought to have, but it's not the reality of this moment. Because even when you dissolve your own, you're going to feel, you actually become more fine-tuned, okay? Where you will begin to feel the collective unconsciousness and the collective pain body. Yeah. Because you are awakening, and you are meant to awaken and not only bring healing to yourself through that conscious being, but we are also meant to bring healing to others. That's how it works. That's the cycle. And the gift of awakening is now we have to be present for others, and we are there. And whether we become formal teachers or informal teachers, we will be teaching, because life, the evolution of consciousness, is happening through the human being, and that means all human beings, including the ones that are severely unconscious. So even when you dissolve your own pain body, or when that happens, maybe it's not you, as in the ego, you dissolving it, but when it happens through you that it's actually dissolved, your work isn't finished. You'll find life might bring you somebody that comes along who has a big pain body, and you're there as that aid, that assistant, that helper. I've told this story before, and the reason why I keep telling this one, because it was the most profound, and the first time I really understood what Eckhart meant was that how we can bring, help somebody dissolve their pain body. I went to a Starbucks, got my tea, and there were several empty seats, but I happened to sit down in a particular seat, and right next to me was this young girl and an older man, maybe her father, I don't know. But she was really upset, angry. You could feel that burning energy coming off her. And I'm like, well, there's other seats. I guess I can move. That was my thought. But my body wasn't moving. And I recognized, okay, my body's not moving, so I guess I'm staying put. And all I can do is drink my tea and feel the sensation that was happening, because energy knows no boundaries. It won't go, hey, I'll stop here. It just, right? It's all one. So here I am feeling it. So I'm drinking my tea. And suddenly, and I don't know how long it was, whether it's 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I wasn't aware of the time. But suddenly, what I felt inside of me, that energy that I was feeling that was inside me, suddenly burst. The moment that it burst, she started laughing. And I understood what Eckhart meant by how we can help dissolve another person's pain body. If you are truly unaffected and it doesn't touch your own pain body, so meaning yours start to get activated, you can sit through somebody's pain body and help them dissolve it. But as soon as it activates yours, then you need to be more conscious, more aware, because you're really not going to be much help because it's within you, unless you can sit with both that's happening at the same time. And if you can't, then I suggest that you remove yourself, because you don't want your pain body to become fully activated, because then you'll go into full unconsciousness. So you can remove yourself and then dissolve it within your own body. So life will bring you an event to show you whether or not it's dissolved or not. And if it isn't dissolved, wonderful. It just means you've got more work. And that's okay, because it's what's happening, it's what is. Yeah.
So as you can guess, I'm in the summer, the southern hemisphere. We just finished our retreat here on the Sunshine Coast of Australia. It's very warm, but a cooling breeze coming from the ocean. So let's settle into the present moment. Access the stillness that's already within you, even though you might not have realized it. Even with people who have the most turbulent and chaotic minds, there is stillness underneath it. And to find that, it is vital to find that stillness within, because otherwise you are at the mercy of your mind and you are lost in that continuous noise. So here, it's helpful for you to, as I'm sure you know already, to become aware of the silent spaces between the words. Rather than just pay attention to the words. In fact, be more interested, so to speak, in the silent spaces than the words. The silent space on the external level is when I stop speaking, so the sound is no longer produced. There's an absence of sound. And that's what we call silence. Maybe not complete silence here because there are some background noises, so perhaps you can hear birds and other noise. But when I don't speak, there's the absence of noise, except for the birds. And when you're aware that there is an absence of noise, that there is a silence, which is an external thing, simultaneously something happens inside you. And that's why it is so wonderful to be aware of external silence. You may know this already, but whether you've heard this before or not doesn't matter. The important thing is to realize it now. So, when you pay attention to silence, what is it you pay attention to? Nothing in particular. There is no content to silence. When I speak, the words, the sounds are the content. When I stop speaking, there's no content. And if you're new to this, you might even ask, what is it that I pay attention to when I pay attention to silence? And the answer is nothing, really. Well, then the question arises, how can I pay attention to nothing? Well, you pay attention to that space of no content. And then something happens inside you simultaneously. You might notice that when you pay attention to just the fact that there is a silence, you can do it when you're alone in a room. You can do it in the middle of the night. You can do it out in nature. You can do it in a church, preferably when it's empty, or a temple. Anywhere where there is some silence, you become aware of it. Don't overlook the silence and don't always look for the noise. So what happens inside you when you become aware of that absence of noise? Thinking subsides. And you become still inside. The moment you become aware of silence and pay attention to silence, you become still inside. The ceaseless stream of thinking subsides, and what's left is only that alert space. You may not be able to sustain it for very long by yourself. It doesn't matter as long as it's there. If it's only for a few seconds, it's good enough to start with. And here perhaps you're able to sustain it, perhaps during the entire duration of our meditation. In other words, let go of thinking without falling asleep and just be here, present, as a presence, conscious presence. Now the words I speak are so simple that you can't really think about them because there's nothing to figure out. So to understand what I'm saying, you don't need to add some more thought to it. So the best way of being here with me is to embrace the state of thoughtless awareness. No need to think. And you haven't disappeared. The essence of who you are is not only still here, the essence of who you are has emerged more fully now when you are still. And the strangest thought that always went through my mind when I was on my bicycle cycling in nature, and then I sometimes would get off my bike and just sit there and look around. And always I had this thought in my head which said, this will always be here. I already mentioned perceiving without labeling as a practice, alert sense perception. Nature, especially natural things, and they're everywhere here, nature is extremely helpful, especially in the world that we live in, for sanity, even not just here where you go back into your everyday life. Sanity can easily be found in nature if you go, because you can divide the world into the human-made world and the natural world. And some people live almost exclusively in the human-made world, especially if you live in a big city. But there's this division that when I was a child, I was not happy a lot of the time when I was a child because of dysfunctional family background. They couldn't help it, they were just in the grip of their ego. But when I was given a bicycle, I was able to leave the city and cycle to the outskirts where there was some nature. And not magnificent nature, just ordinary trees and some fields and trees. And there I experienced my moments of happiness and relief in nature. And already there I knew the difference between the human-made world, that was the world of unhappiness for me, and the natural world, which was the world where I experienced a sense of freedom. And the strangest thought that always went through my mind when I was on my bicycle cycling in nature, and then I sometimes would get off my bike and just sit there and look around. And always I had this thought in my head which said, this will always be here. This will always be here. And I was only 10, 11, 12 years old, that this will always be here. this will always be here. Somehow, and I didn't even fully understand what this meant. I could feel, but I realized later, this is nature and this is the man, and the man-made, the human-made world is not actually going to last. The natural world is, relative to the human-made world, is almost eternal, and the planet has unbelievable ability for regeneration, which we may talk about some other time. So the humans will not destroy. They should do all they can to refrain from causing harm to the planet, obviously. But even if they go totally insane and they don't manage, they will not be able to destroy I will talk about at some other time. You don't need to believe me now. So the practice then is another. Tomorrow I will talk about relating to other humans here. That is another kind of practice, a bit more difficult than relating to nature, because humans are difficult. And especially don't, as you go to sleep, make sure that the last thing that you are aware of before entering sleep, make sure that the last thing is not your device. Or the TV is still running. A good practice is you lie in bed on your back and place attention into the body, the inner energy field of your body, so you feel the body. Many times written and spoken about it as an important practice, inner body awareness. What you're aware of is not the physical body, is that which animates the physical body. And so it takes your attention away from thinking. It's a very easy, quick way of stopping your mind without exerting some willpower and saying, stop, stop, stop. That won't work anyway. But there's attention into your body, abdomen, hands, feet, feel them from within. We'll do some practice tomorrow perhaps, or you might do it with Kim also. Feel the aliveness that pervades the physical body, and you feel, and from there you gradually go to sleep. And it's a beautiful, completely different way of entering sleep. And if you wake at night with certain thoughts, fearful thoughts, for many people as they waken at night, what's going to happen? Nothing. This is the present moment and there's nothing happening. Yeah, but what's going when I get back home? It's my life is just it's all shambles. Oh my God, where am I going to? There's nothing. There is no crisis now. This is the present moment. The present moment, and you're in bed. It's warm and comfortable. So go into the body. Take attention away from that, and you can feel. If you feel the inner body, there's no attention left for thinking, and it's usual. So whenever you have a sleepless night, you begin to be plagued by thoughts. Direct your energy first. You start with the abdomen, breathe into it, for example. It rises, and you feel that as you breathe in, follow the attention with your breath. And the abdomen rises and falls, and then you feel the energy spreading out from there. Or you can start with your hands until you get a sense of global aliveness pervading the body. Beautiful. And when you wake up, just one last thing. When you wake up and these thoughts begin to tell you how critical your life is, and fear, and then you say, okay, I'm going to go into the body, and then the thought that will arise most likely is, no, I can't do it now. No, this is not the time. I can't. I cannot. No, I can't do it. I can't. Are you going to believe that thought or not? Because don't believe every thought that comes into your head. So, and if the thought is, I can't, yes, I can. Here, look, I'm doing it. So don't get persuaded by a thought that tells you, no, you can't do it now.